Market volatile on global cues and standoff at the Indo-China border. Key indices move off the lows. Mid-cap index trades in line. Supreme Court defers hearing on PIL demanding interest waiver during moratorium but tells the government to make benefits of moratorium available to people. Depositors, SEBI and IBA bat against the waiver of interest. SEBI relaxes norms for promoters to increase stake in companies via preferential allotment to 10% from 5%. The market regulator also removes timeline restrictions on share purchases in case of voluntary open offer. Toll collection reaches 80 to 82% of pre-lockdown levels as traffic almost stabilizes to those pre-lockdown levels, says NHAI to CNBC TV 18. The authority also says it has been able to settle nearly 14,000 crore rupees of disputed claims through conciliation. 20 Indian Army personnel, including a colonel, killed in clashes with Chinese troops in the Galwan Valley in eastern Ladakh on Monday night. The army, in a late-night statement, says Indian and Chinese troops have since disengaged. And the Supreme Court agrees to hear a PIL by Prashant Bhushan CPIL seeking transfer of funds from PM CARES to the National Disaster Response Fund. Also issues notice to centre and seeks a reply on the PIL within 2 weeks. All right, those are our top stories. For now, the market is trending about 0.5% higher. So we're clearly off of the worst point of the day. And, you know, at one point, it really looked like it was going to be a down day. But since then, things have recovered and volatility seems to have ebbed, at least in the last 1 hour, because so far we've been holding with the gains. The mid-cap index moving pretty much in line with the frontliners. And the Nifty Bank, which at one point the financials were the worst performers actually pre-noon. And now we are seeing that some stability seems to be returning to the banking and the financial stocks. And why is that? Well, let's get to our top story. That's the interest waiver case. The Supreme Court has said it doesn't see merit in charging interest on loans on which moratorium has been claimed by people. Ashmit Kumar, our correspondent who tracks all the action in the courts very closely, now joins in with the observations from the Apex Court. Ashmit.
Well, the proceedings in the Apex Court began with the government, the Solicitor General appearing for the government on behalf of the Finance Ministry, clarifying the position, at least as far as interest waiver is concerned. On that, the government's position is quite clear that it is not feasible, that it will hurt not just the financial stability of the banking system, but it will also hurt the savings of depositors who've parked their savings with banks, expecting a certain rate of return. That will also likely to get hurt. And on that count, the government's position, at least as far as interest waiver is concerned, is quite clear. The question, however, arose when the Apex Court asked the question that the limited scope of these proceedings is no longer interest waiver, but rather the levy of interest on deferred interest. That is the question that was posed to the government, on which the government said that that is an issue that is best left to be decided between the banks on one hand and the borrowers on the other. Now, that is something that the Supreme Court didn't look very kindly at. The Supreme Court said that the government cannot express the sense of helplessness, that this is an issue that cannot be left to the banks alone, that if the intent was to provide some form of relief to people by way of the moratorium, then the benefits of that moratorium need to be taken to the people. One very interesting observation that the Apex Court made, and this is on the back of a comment by SBI. SBI said that 90% of the borrowers haven't even opted for the moratorium, to which the Supreme Court took that statement to the government, saying that the reason why people have not been opting for the moratorium is because they don't see the benefit arising out of that. So on the back of all of this, the Apex Court as of today has deferred the hearing to August. That's essentially because the bank said that we're currently dealing with an evolving situation. We need to be able to ascertain what the burden of this moratorium shall be, and towards that end, the issue needs to be put on the back burner. So the Apex Court, in a manner of speaking, obliging, putting the hearing for the first week of August, and in doing so, meanwhile, the Supreme Court also directing for the RBI as well as the Finance Ministry to revisit the issue of the moratorium and to formalize a position on what the position of the government shall be on the levy of interest on interest. So as of right now, the issue goes back to the back burner, with the owners back on the center to clarify on whether or not they support or are against the levy of interest on deferred interest. Back to you.
All right, Ashmit, thanks very much for explaining it so well. We'll move to another big story now. SEBI has allowed some relaxation of preferential allotment norms, so promoters can now, use this route for up to 10% compared with just about 5% earlier. Nisha Podar, my colleague, joins in with the details. Nisha.
So this is in continuation to the various efforts and the relaxations which have been given by the market regulator SEBI to deal with the new norms post the COVID era when the stock markets had fallen, to in fact give more ways to the companies to increase funds, to raise funds in these difficult times, and also opportunity to the promoters to consolidate their position in the company. The latest one is an important one where the cap on the preferential allotment of shares to the promoters increases to 10% from the earlier 5%, and this will be applicable for this entire financial year up to March 2021. Now this is going to be important as the promoters, if they want to increase their stake, can do so by infusing more cash in the company. So fundraising as well as promoter increased stake is both done in one shot. Apart from this, another minor change that has been made but is going to be significant in terms of promoters raising their stake via voluntary open offer. For that, the timeline restrictions have been relaxed, which means that any share purchase done over a one year period would have restricted a voluntary open offer, but that particular restriction is removed, which means that a promoter can increase stake and then also avail of the voluntary open offer route. So this leaves the promoters with three important options: voluntary open offer, they can also do preferential allotment of shares, infuse money in the company, and creeping acquisition, which still is capped at 5%. So these are the three important options, but one may argue that the preferential allotment pricing norms of 6 months has not been relaxed by SEBI, but a lot of experts now say that that relaxation does not matter anymore because we are already 3-4 months down the knee-jerk reaction that stock markets had seen, and these are new realities based on which the preferential allotment can be done in a few months down the line in the new normal valuations in the market. So important developments coming in. We also spoke to experts on the significance of this relaxation.
In order to boost the financial of the company, the SEBI probably has permitted this relaxation up to March 21. Otherwise, we are always saying that you should issue right issue preferential offer is anti-minority. But in this particular case, because of the extraordinary situation where the companies have to fight for every penny, I think it is a very good move.
This is a good step in the right direction. Firstly, this is not something about deals happening just today. This is a relaxation which has been given all the way until 31st of March 2021. So from that perspective, obviously one would have liked it if a relaxation on the 6-month average, which I think industry has been asking for, had also been given. But even in the absence of that, obviously it's already 3 months since markets started correcting in early March. And so from that perspective, over a period of time, the need to move away from the 6-month average becomes less important.
All right, and let's take stock of what's happening across the line of actual control. What's the situation there? It's been confirmed now that 20 Indian soldiers were killed in violent clashes that broke out between the Chinese and Indian troops on Monday night. So Parikshit, my colleague who's been tracking the story, joins in with the latest update. Parikshit.
Well, things not looking very good. The situation is still tense in the Galwan region and other flashpoints at the line of actual control. We are given to believe by our sources that there could be more Indian soldiers who would have been injured in that clash that took place on the intervening night of 15th and 16th of June. Sources also telling us that there have been casualties on the Chinese side, and a commanding officer of the unit posted on the Chinese side has also been killed. The news agency ANI was reporting this some time back, but the Indian government is not confirming this independently. Having said that, there was a high-level meeting at Defence Minister Rajnath Singh's residence. The Chief of Defence Staff, Bipin Rawat, was there. You had the 3 service chiefs present there as well. External Affairs Minister Subramaniam Jaishankar and the Defence Minister Rajnath Singh also spoke on phone this morning. So the contacts between the two governments continue. We believe that major general level talks are also slotted to take place. The Chinese side has once again reacted, asking India to restrain its frontline troops, saying that the Indian government, the Indian troops should not infringe on what they perceive as Chinese territory. The Chinese not talking about any casualties. Their spokesperson maintains that they're unaware of any kind of casualties on the Indian side. We are expecting more details. There are international reactions pouring in. The US government has condoled the loss of lives in that clash that took place in the Galwan region. They're following the situation very closely, but they said that they would support any kind of dispute resolution by both sides. The British government has also reacted, saying that India and China should engage in dialogue. Violence would not help anyone at all. Back to you.
All right, Pariksha, thanks very much for that. We'll take a quick break. Market holding on in the green. Up next, NHAI toll collection recovers to above 80% of the pre-lockdown levels. Highlights of that chat with the management lined up in a bit.